What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of The More You Know BTOS. This is episode 3 with Nothing to Fear, and we're going to dive into that just very shortly. My name is John Swansong Parker. I co-host Radiovania with Zach Rotello. And if you like that show, you might have heard that we were going to be doing our own little solo project stuff. So basically, I started this one about Batman the Animated Series. I could go through in the order that the Warner Brothers DVDs have it, and kind of just give a little reflection on each episode. And let's go ahead and dive in to this week's one. So like I said before, we got Nothing to Fear. This is written by Henry T. Gilroy and Sean Catherine Derrick, and directed by Boyd Kirkland. And I believe Boyd Kirkland is a name that we're going to see a couple times in this show. This week we get the classic showdown of Batman versus the Scarecrow. So just some highlights to talk about first. There's this really cool opening where there's like a split montage, almost kind of like the beginning of The Dark Knight, where the Scarecrow's forces are closing in on some type of robbery scenario, while a very high-class, wealthy gala is going on for the Gotham University. This is a really cool cinematic-esque sequence, and there's a really awesome part on the elevator where Dr. Long, who will come up later on in the episode as the nemesis for the Scarecrow, and Bruce Wayne are on an elevator, and it kind of sets up this whole thing of what Bruce's biggest fear is letting his parents' legacy down. Dr. Long is talking about how Bruce Wayne might be keeping the Wayne name profitable, but he's not doing as well of a job, in the city as his dad did and something like that. And so in this series, as opposed to the Dark Knight trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, Batman's greatest fear is bats, which works well for that version. But in this one, it's a little more, it's a little deeper than that. He's really afraid of not living up to Thomas and Martha Wayne and what that name means. And, Alfred, will add these reassurances and stuff like that, but it really gets to him. And we see that a lot in this episode. And you can also see that relationship that he has, we're trying to live up to the Wayne name in a couple other episodes, as well as one of the movies, I think. But anyway, so you have that opening robbery sequence, and I really do enjoy the Scarecrow. He's actually one of my favorite Batman villains. I'm a big fan of the Arkham Asylum written by Grant Morrison version, where he's like dragging the pitchfork. I think that's a great piece of art. Tim Sale's version with the overlong hat, and also the Arkham video games. I think that version is really, really creepy as well. This isn't to harp on Cillian Murphy. I think he did awesome in Batman Begins and the other Dark Knight movies, but I like my Scarecrow to look like a scarecrow with the hat. Anyway, we get a little bit more of Bullock and Batman going at odds to continue to build upon this tense relationship between the two of them. And we get to see the cool Bat Vanish, where they turn around and he's already gone. But it's just something that you can really see in this show, that Batman's kind of going against all odds, it seems like, all the time. Whether it's cops, villains, his own personal fears, all that kind of jazz. And I do think that the motivations for the Scarecrow in this episode are a lot more believable than they are in Batman Begins. He was scorned by the university by Dr. Long. He was a former professor of psychology at Gotham University, and he was obsessed with fear. And the people higher up said that his experiments were too dangerous and they were psychotic, so they ex-nate him out of the university. He really took that to heart, so now he's out for revenge. Whereas in Batman Begins, he's just kind of a crazy man who somehow happened to figure out how to hang out with Ra's al Ghul and work with his plan to take down Gotham through fear. But anyway, that's besides the point. I do like how they handle Scarecrow in this episode and in this series. I think his motivations are more believable. Again, much like you've probably seen before, that fear toxin that he has, we see that a lot in this episode. It really takes its toll on people. And it's just something that I think is really interesting, kind of like how I mentioned in the first episode, how each villain is kind of like a mirror version of Batman or something like that, where it's like, you know how I'd mentioned if like he gave into killing is what the Joker is and stuff like that. Scarecrow doesn't really necessarily have something, but maybe if you guys think of anything, you can comment on it or let me know what you think. I just think he's a villain who's at odds with Batman because they want different things, not necessarily that they are as intertwined like Batman and the Joker or Batman and Harvey Dent or something like that. But anyway, the thing I wanted to get to most is the best scene in this episode and possibly the greatest line in the show, where Batman is hanging on the Zeppelin and he's freaking out, hearing the ominous voice of his father telling him, "Bruce, why did you fail me?" And we get the amazing voice of Kevin Conroy saying, "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman." And that's something that people always ask him at cons and stuff to say. It's just a really cool, iconic line. I mean, I feel like every person who's played Batman in any capacity has had to say, "I'm Batman" at some point. And this is definitely up there with a really cool one. And when he does this, it dissipates the fear toxin from his body. And the failure in his father's eyes that he thought he was, but he finally understands that he did make the right choice in being Batman. It's not throwing away the Wayne legacy. It's doing something that's different than what his parents were doing, but it's still just as important. Why should Gotham City be afraid like he was when he was a young boy and given to the fear that, you know, the Scarecrow enables in people and stuff like that? It's a good episode to further reinforce that there should be nothing to fear, hence the title. And then a last little comment, Dr. Crane, Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, his biggest fear is Batman, much like in Batman Begins. There's a really cool part where they animate almost like this churn and bog Fantasian version of Batman, which I think is a really cool, creepy scene. And then the closing scene is a really, really cool one where Bruce is visiting his parents' grave, puts 2 roses down, and then as he's walking away out of the cemetery, his shadow is the silhouette of Batman. So it's something that's really cool and, you know, meaningful. But anyway, it's a really, really good episode as well. Sets up our Dr. Crane that we're going to come across a few more times in the episode, or in the series, I should say. A couple other little notes. Kevin McCarthy plays Dr. Long. Richard Mall, who's the voice of Harvey Dent, plays the Bat Computer and Thomas Wayne, I think, in this episode. And Henry Pollock II plays the Scarecrow. But anyway, next week we'll be coming at you, I believe, with another Joker episode. And if you like the show, please hit that red subscribe button. Also, please feel free to check out Radiovania. Zach and I talk about news about pop culture and nerdy stuff, as well as do After Darks with guests every now and then. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Radiovania, and you can email us at radiovaniashow@gmail.com with any questions or comments that you want to add. But anyway, hopefully you guys like how the show has been going so far, and I look forward to doing it in the future. Have a week.